Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 would go down as one of the worst rated games ever, but in just a week it made over $1 billion. And look what Activision did to Blizzard. Everyone pointed to Activision's acquisition of Blizzard to be the company's downfall. And more specifically, they pointed at one man, Bobby Kotick. I had so many questions. How could one man be the downfall of a massive company? Could he really be that bad? Or is he just a businessman? And where did Activision even come from? And how can they be so successful in an ultra-competitive industry when they keep making games that the consumers are so unhappy with? So I did a deep dive into the industry, and I was genuinely surprised with what I found. The first surprise was Activision's origin story, and how we needed to go all the way back to the beginning to get the answers. It's 1977. Reagan's the president, and the original Star Wars just hit the big screen. Atari just released the 2600, the first real attempt at in-home gaming. The first thing Atari had to figure out was how much to charge for this new product. They went with the value-based model, which you would derive most of your profits from a perceived value. And incredibly, the number they came up with over 50 years ago stuck. They also needed to figure out how much do you pay the people that actually make these games, the game developers. This is where some of the issues started for Atari. David Crane, a game developer, noticed that a game he was fully responsible for made Atari $20 million, while he was still on a salary of $20,000. So Crane brought it to the attention of 3 other game developers that were also overperforming. The 4 were not just overperforming, they were outperforming the whole development team of Atari. Not only did they produce just as many games as the other 31 devs combined, they also made the best-selling ones. Feeling undervalued, they confronted the CEO, Kesar. Instead of Kesar negotiating with these juggernauts of coding, he just insulted them, calling them towel designers, and that anybody could make cartridges. Even though his insults were unclear, his message was not. No more money or recognition for the game developers. As a result, the Gang of 4 quit and started their own company, Activision. And Activision was off to a running start. David Crane wanted to focus on innovation in the industry, and while he was working on a new walking animation, he had a eureka moment, and Pitfall was born.
Just last night, I was lost in the jungle with Pitfall Harry, surrounded by giant scorpions and man-eating crocodiles.
Pitfall, designed by David Crane for Activision.
But wait a second, hold up. You mean to tell me that Activision was founded by devalued, passionate game devs that left the big business of gaming to start their own company focused on gameplay? Oh, the irony. But Atari constantly losing their best game devs was only one of their problems. The consumers quickly became upset with the quality of these Atari games. The ported games were marketed as replicas of their arcade counterparts, but they were far from it. The graphics were not as good, the screen would flash on and off randomly, and many of the game's mechanics that were present in the arcade systems were not there in the 2600. But there was no Reddit or forums to jump on and complain. They just simply stopped buying the products. And the in-home gaming industry was new, and it wasn't as robust as it is today. As a result, it caused a gaming crash, and Atari went completely out of business. Activision barely hung on. It sent a very clear message to any future game developers. And the industry responded. One region in particular, Japan. Nintendo, Sega, and Capcom drove the gaming industry into a new era of creativity and discovery. Gaming studios started to test different demographics. Acclaim Studio came out with Mortal Kombat in 1993. They decided games were not just for children anymore. It was the #1 selling game in 1993, and games for young men were on the rise. Activision was seeing incredible growth. They had 60 employees and $157 million in revenue in 1983. Then the crash hit. Although they survived, they were mortally wounded. the scope of the company still grew. They began business application software and changed their name to Metagenic. But they still couldn't make any profits. By 1991, they were $60 million in debt. This was when a group of investors, including Bobby Kotick, saw an opportunity to get into the gaming industry and buy Activision. So negotiations began, but no agreement could be made. But Mr. Kotick did not take no for an answer. He went behind Activision's back straight to their investors and successfully implemented a hostile takeover. Activision was his. His first order of business, clean house. Of the 150 employees that Activision acquired, Mr. Kotick fired all but 8. Activision stopped developing games themselves and started to acquire other game developers. They acquired 25 in all, with their sights set on a few notable developers. Neversoft, which produced the mega success Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, Red Octane, who developed Guitar Hero, and Blizzard, who had developed some of the most impactful games of the era. But Activision was mostly interested in World of Warcraft and its live service model, and how some consumers would become completely engulfed in the game.
An obsession? Sure, but the question is, does the international addiction to an internet game represent a danger? Maybe, but there is also no indication that anything can slow the explosive growth of the intoxicating game called World of Warcraft.
Activision had arrived as a powerhouse in the gaming industry, but they had a plan to make a generational success. Activision had correctly identified a large demographic of males that would be receptive to gaming if it was more masculine. They didn't want to feel like nerds. So Activision went to work, checking all their different developers for the perfect game. World of Warcraft, it was too fantasy. Guitar Hero, too family. They needed something competitive. They needed something glorified.
Everyone, we are combat ineffective here! We are taking heavy fire from the schools! Can you assist?
That's when they set their eyes on Call of Duty. Perfect. With the right game selected, there was only one more hurdle: control. When they acquired Infinity Wards in 2002, Activision was mostly hands-off, letting them develop Call of Duty in their image. That had to change. They didn't want the president or the CEO of Infinity Wards throwing any wrenches in their plans. Activision saw their chance in 2007. After the launch of Call of Duty 4, West and Zampella wanted to renegotiate their contract. They wanted more money, and ironically, they wanted more control. Activision agreed, but put a sneaky clause in the contract stating if West and Zampella would be fired, then all of the control to the Call of Duty franchise would be Activision's. After the contracts were signed, that's allegedly what Activision started to do. They tried to find ways to fire West and Zampella. As a result, West and Zampella tried to find ways to make Infinity Wards a company outside of Activision's control. Even though there was all this internal strife between Activision and Infinity Wards, Activision knew it was only a matter of time before total control of the Call of Duty franchise became theirs. So they put the wheels in motion to their master plan to make Call of Duty the most profitable franchise in history. They had to make Call of Duty cool. What do cool dudes watch? Sports. Giga Chad. They were going to release their full-length announcement trailer during the NBA Eastern Conference Championships. Giga Chad. Who's the most popular rapper at the time? Eminem.
So I collapse, I'm spilling these raps long as you feel them to the
Giga Chad. What do cool kids drink? Monster Energy. Have the voice actors be B-list celebrities. Have a prestige edition of the game with real functioning night vision goggles. Giga Chad. But this approach was not cheap. The standard marketing budget for their rivals Halo was around $30 million. While Activision said, "Hold my cool kid beer," and their marketing budget ballooned to $150 million. 3 to 5 times more than it actually cost to develop the game. And the sad thing is, for us gamers, it worked. In the US and the UK, the game sold 4.7 million units in the first 24 hours. The total revenue for the first day sales was $310 million, making Call of Duty the biggest entertainment launch in history. So after this groundbreaking success, West and Zappella had to have proved themselves. Right? Wrong. Activision later fired them, taking back full control of the Call of Duty franchise, because Activision and Bobby Kotick never wanted West or Zappella. Under this new marketing first philosophy, just like Atari when they had first started, the game developers were towel designers. They were not important. Anyone can make the game. It's the marketing that sells the game. And unfortunately for us gamers, Activision didn't fail like Atari did. They knew the secret sauce. And this formula was so successful and so foolproof, Activision utilized it to have the top selling game for the next 15 years. Interestingly, this is with the community feeling less and less happy with the product. They sold more copies with a user score of 2.2 than Elden Ring.
And the Game Award for Best Game Direction,
for Best Art Direction, for Best Role-Playing Game.
Game of the Year winner is
Elden Ring.
Elden Ring!
Elden Ring!
So what's the actual problem here? Activision has developed an extremely well marketing program for Call of Duty. So what? Well, there are two big problems, and the first is this shift from gameplay. All the things that Activision did to make Call of Duty this massive success were outside of the actual game. So the industry starts to get filled with businessmen instead of gamers. So we live in this world where every new announcement trailer just looks so amazing and so appealing to all demographics, and they're always almost too good to be true, and they almost always are. To really hammer this point home, let's play a game. Call of Duty as a first-person shooter was never going to reinvent the meta, but they at least always pushed the boundaries of graphics. But even that has slowed, or even came to a halt. Let's go back and look at the graphics of Call of Duty 2, which was released in 2005, and compare that to Call of Duty Modern Warfare, which was released in 2009. It's a 4-year window. Look at how much better the graphics look in Call of Duty Modern Warfare in 2009. You can obviously tell the difference. Now let's compare that to today's Call of Duties. I'm going to show 3 different Call of Duty games with the same 4-year window. I'm not asking you to put them in order. Just find Call of Duty Cold War from 2020. It's pretty hard. They look like the same game. And Call of Duty has pumped out 2 more games in that 4-year period. Now I know technology has changed and there was a bigger leap in graphics in the 2000s, but can you even tell the difference? Unless you're some veteran Call of Duty player, it's very hard to do. And it's because of this marketing first approach, developing the game and being at the leading edge of graphics, which used to be so important with first-person shooters. Now, you just need some baseline game that the audience will recognize as, yeah, that's a Call of Duty game. Oh, it's a new one. Cool. Marketing first. The second problem is Activision is in the process of moving the goalpost on what it costs for a AAA game. Throughout most of Call of Duty's lifespan, they've used the same value-based model that Atari established. After their massive success in 2009, that model told them they need to raise prices, but they didn't want to just raise some flat 10 or 20% increase on sticker price. They wanted to try a new model, an add-on based model, where you not only buy the game for upfront AAA price, you are also bombarded by additional content which is also behind a paywall. Activision was very clever with this new model. They didn't want to just rush it out. So in 2010, they repeated the same success they had in 2009, except they introduced COD points. This was an in-game currency that you could only acquire through playing the game. So it was very popular. It was this new reason to play the game, where you could buy your own microtransactions and build your character the way you wanted to build your character. But in reality, by utilizing this free model, they were just training the behavior of the consumer. So when ultimately the COD points would transition into being acquired through real money, it wouldn't be so jarring to the consumer. But there may be a sliver of hope, but it will come in the form of the AA industry. Activision's greed has gone too far. It has pushed a lot of gamers away, seeking different avenues for gaming. The AA industry is actually acquiring some tools to be able to compete. The use of these open source game engines like Unity and Unreal Engine 5 have given the AA space a chance to close the gap on graphics, which the AAA industry has had a monopoly on since the creation of gaming. One side effect is a lot of games are looking similar to this Fortnite vibe, but it could be a small price to pay to force the industry in a better direction. And Palworld has shown that there is a risky approach of using this inspired by model, which is towing the line between highly recognizable content and IP theft. It's high risk, high reward. If you can pull it off, you're going to get AAA profits with a fraction of the cost, but it will most likely require some litigation. And the gaming industry is a copycat league. So with the massive success of Palworld, I'm sure we're going to see some copycats soon. But there you have it, God Gamers. What do you think? Is the AAA industry completely doomed? Probably. Let's be honest, probably. But let me know what you think, God Gamers. And as always, keep up that good fight.